This is the only channel in South Asia that provides you with the accurate news, updated news about the Canada and Australia visa. So that's why subscribe this channel for the updates on Canada and Australia visa. And also you need to click on the page link in the description. That is our official Facebook page where you can talk to me one-on-one. Thank you. Hello, this is Ali Azim from Ali Azim Services. We cannot deny the efforts of the Australian government, and the Australian National Cabinet is very much keen on opening the doors for international community. But actually, the first priority for Australian government is that they want to get their Aussies back in Australia. So they want to get their Australian nationals back in Australia. So whatever policies they have introduced in the last 2 weeks, that is for the Aussies nationals to get back them in their home country. So the residing country is always very important. Like you belong to India or belong to Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Nepal, or Pakistan. So this is the residing country, and it's our prime desire to be the part of our country or the home country when any catastrophe or any destructive period is going on in the likes of coronavirus or the COVID-19 period. So Australian government is pretty keen, and I am so much glad that the Australian government or the Australian National Cabinet is made plans. You will see that very first time in November and December, they have given the pre-departure guidelines for the community of Australia to get back in the home country. And they took 30,000 Australians back in Australia, on the basis of the pilot program they given for the Australian nationals. So later in the November and the start of the December, actually, they announced that they will take 35,000 further Australians back in Australia before the Christmas. So they could not fulfill all the requirements, and they could not take all the passengers and the Australian nationals back in time. That was just because of some reasons and the internal problems of the COVID-19 cases. And all of a sudden in New South Wales, you see or you witness some of the cases, they emerged suddenly. And of course, that was very hard for the Australian government to get the Australians back from the source countries. And let me tell you one thing here, the source countries are so much important. Like if Australians are getting back in Australia from United Kingdom, if the Australians are getting back to Australia from United States, if the Australians are getting back to Australia from South Asian countries. So actually getting back to Australia from the source countries, the Australian have introduced the traffic light program, and that traffic light program is working very well, and the future international traveling is all depending upon this traffic light program. Why? Because the source countries are going to play a very important role. You see that there are countries in the world, and they are very much successful in the vaccine immunization, obviously, in the likes of UK. They have started the vaccine immunization. So when you talk about America, they have started the vaccine immunization. When you talk about India, so they are going to start the vaccine immunization pretty soon. Pakistan in March. Bangladesh, in March or April. So this is very, very much important news, and the update I'm going to share that the further international traveling. Look, this is the prime responsibility of the Australian government to take Aussies back in the first step. So whatever steps they are taking, that is with the same purpose, and that purpose is to take the Australian nationals back in Australia, first of all. And this is the first door, actually. So the second door is for the international students, the second door is for the international immigrants, and the second door is for the international visitors and the travelers. Travelers want to be the part of the Australian community. This is one of the most beautiful countries in the world. Visitors want to visit Australia. The students want to study in Australia. The immigrants want to be the social part of Australian community, because that is the most beautiful and the lovely country in the world to be. But let me tell you one thing here. All depends upon this plan the traffic light signal plan. And this plan that represents the source countries. And let me tell you, if your country is a country where the vaccine immunization or vaccine has been introduced and vaccine has been started using amongst the patients of the coronavirus or the COVID-19, that you are going to enter in Australia pretty easily. Two more things Australian government has introduced. The first thing is the negative COVID report, and the second thing is the quarantine plan. The quarantine plan was disclosed by me, let me tell you, like 10 days back, but I was criticized so many people. But later on the 8th of January, you witnessed that the Scott Morrison, Australian Prime Minister, announcing that he's advised, or he is suggested, or he is given an order to the chief medical officer to introduce the plan for the quarantine. So the good news is that Australian, international travelers, I'm not talking about the international travelers in the form of students. I'm talking about the international travelers. I mean, Australian nationals. International travelers mean the Australians, who are existing in other sourcing countries like South Asia, like Mexico, like South Asia, like South Africa, like United Kingdom or United States. The first step, if the success of the international students, the success of the immigrants, and the success of the tourist entrance, that all depends upon the success of the plan for the Aussie Nationals. The domestic success is going to encourage the Australian government to take international students. You see, the vice chancellor of the Australian National University, the chancellor of the University Technology Sydney, the chancellor of the Western Sydney University, the chancellor of the Western Australia University, the chancellor of the University of Adelaide, they have all given their concrete statements about the student industry, the Australian higher education industry, that has been minimized. So this is very hard for the Australian education providers to keep the things up for the future coming time if the borders are not open for the international students and other immigrants. So, like 300,000 tourists, they used to visit Australia in 2019 and 2020. Like 570,000 students used to come in Australia. And like you talk about the immigrants, that is also in the thousands. So, my dear, this industry is suffering. 39 to 40 billion dollar business. But let me tell you one thing here, that if Australian authorities are not making a serious plan regarding international students, immigrants, and the travelers, this is going to be a greatest disaster for the economy of Australia. So I am 100% hopeful that Australians' borders are going to open pretty soon if the plan for the Australian national is successful as per Australian National Cabinet on 8th of January. And I'm so much hopeful that this plan is going to be successful. And I'm so much hopeful that the people who have been waiting for the borders to be open, they are going to enter in Australia and start their studies. My best wishes always with you. Keep smiling.